Jim, are you ready? Jim, can you hear us? You're on mute. Are you ready?
You need to allow him to.
Sorry.
Jim can't.
He can? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, here we go.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep, we
Perfect.
have you.
Okay.
Jeff.
Ready? Hey, welcome everybody. We'll call our meeting to order. Thank you for joining us today. Melanie, you want to call the roll? Chair Wonderman.
Here. And I'm coming in from a remote location because I'm sick. And and there's no one under 18 years old or over 18 years old or of any age here present with me, frankly.
Vice Chair Moyer. Bless you. Here, and on behalf of Chair Wonderman, I will be chairing the meeting. Director Alpha. Here. Director Del Bodo.
Here.
Director Du. Here. We have a forum. Thank you. So we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Wonderful. All right, thank you everyone for joining the San Francisco Bay Ferry Board of Directors meeting, also known as WETA. This monthly meeting is being conducted, as you can see, in a combination of in-person and by video conference, and it is being recorded. To reduce background noise, all of our virtual participants will be joining the meeting listening only mode and muted during the discussion. We welcome comments from the public, as I hope all of you are already very familiar. A public comment period will be set aside after discussion period and will be accepted in person and by video conference. If you wish to speak and you're not in the room physically with us, then please email your name and item number to boardofdirectors@watertransit.org or use the raise hand function on your video screen. And with that, we will commence the meeting. Just real quick, Stephen, did you have anything else that you need or want to add? You're muted.
Thanks for asking. You're all set to proceed.
Fantastic. So we'll open with reports of board chair. The board chair, Jim, do you feel up to making any kind of report?
Just thank you, Chair Moyer, for being chair today and taking over the duties, and really appreciate it. And nice to see you all. And I wish I could be with you, but you wouldn't want me to be. So I'm here remotely, and glad I could at least participate this way. And I guess my only comment is I have been riding pretty frequently, and it's just nice to see so many people on the boats and long lines and happy faces, and just really a very, very positive feeling on the ferry system, anecdotally. So appreciate the work of all of the, the staff, the people who make this possible, and especially the workers on the boats, who are really, really terrific and just do such a great job consistently. So just want to thank everybody for that. I feel like it's a, we're doing important work, bringing life back to downtown San Francisco, for example, and the Oakland terminal where I use, it's much busier. It's feeling a lot more normal. So thank you.
Terrific. Thank you, Chair Wonderman. All right, so report of the directors, and we'll start with our birthday boy today, Director Del Bono. What is your report?
Thank you. I just piggyback on what Jim said. I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of people in the community too, representatives in Chinatown and North Beach, and and just some of the staff to some of the people in North Beach with these festivals going on and stuff. And there's a lot of opportunity out there, a lot of excitement to partner to get people not just to downtown San Francisco, but a short walk away from the ferry building up into North Beach and Chinatown and some of these outlying neighborhoods that are thriving right now. And the other thing I got to go to the other day was a small a chamber mixer for small business at Pier 70. And it was kind of the same reception I got when I let people know, hey, you know, I'm on the board for the ferry system. A lot of excitement, a lot of wanting a partner, a lot of, you know, people saying, hey, I ride the ferry in, you know, you guys are great. I mean, it's just awesome. And then when I left that, I walked through Bart's Arrow and I saw the advertisement for the ferry system up there. And I thought, this is cool. So a great job. I'm excited too. The weather's getting nice and I think it's going to be a good summer. So that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Wonderful. Have a great birthday and thank you for.
Thank you. Thank you.
Problem.
Well, first off, happy birthday, Director Del Bono. That's fun.
Yeah.
I hear you have a nice dinner
Yes.
tonight. Good. I'll keep it short. One of the highlights of my month or of my life, I don't know which one yet, was to be part of the welcoming committee for His Royal Highness Haakon of Norway, and welcoming a Norwegian delegation who was here in the Bay Area for a maritime tech and other green tech and food business event. And the event was one of the main events was on the Delphinus, and it was a huge success. So I want to give a big round of applause to all involved in making it happen and making these 150 or 200 guests feel really special on the bay, and showing where we are today and where we're heading and how we can partner with Nordic countries and green maritime from across the globe. So it was a fantastic event and it was a beautiful day on the bay. Thank you.
All right, and Director Du.
Yeah, thank you. So happy birthday.
Thank you.
And took the ferry over this morning. I was the first time taking the ferry when it was really windy out. And so I had heard concerns from people in the community that they were worried about the ferries ever being canceled because of that kind of weather. And it was smooth. It was great. Not a problem at all. So that was really great. And tons of riders, like the most riders I've seen on a Thursday morning in a long time. And there's no games today, right? So it couldn't have been that. So that was really exciting. The parking lots were all full, more than like just the ferry parking structure, but also the surface lots around it. Not all of them. So 2 of them are still closed, but so that was really great to see. And I'm excited about that. And a really great event also. Yeah, that was amazing. Good job to staff.
All right, and for myself, I want to join my colleagues in commending the staff and the team. I too have been getting comments from the public about how well the service is running, and just week, I think it was one of my clients who's also in the transportation business at a very large transportation company here in San Francisco, maybe a little bit south, rides the ferry in from Vallejo and made a point of telling me how wonderful the team and the staff are. And she's very well, maybe just with our service, but in none of my company service, not with that. But so kudos to the team for that. That was very gratifying. On a sad note, though, since we last met, we lost one of the icons of the San Francisco Bay, and that's Will Travis, who many of you may know was the executive director of the Bay Conservation and Development Commission for a very long time, and has had many other roles, one of which was with the California Coastal Commission, but I think he's best known for his leadership on the BCDC. I myself got to work with him very closely for more than a decade, and he has definitely left a legacy here that all of us who enjoy the Bay are just the beneficiaries of. Will has numerous achievements and commendations, and was a tremendously funny, great man. He was a a mentor to me for a very long time, held me very strictly accountable. Wasn't always my favorite person, but in his own way really helped us to achieve great things. And one of the things that he helped us to achieve is this gorgeous, beautiful plaza here that fronts our downtown ferry terminals. It was his vision for a very, very long time. And eventually we were able to collectively, all of us in this room and others, to make that happen, along with a number of things that line the bay from top to bottom. And so Will passed away a couple weeks ago, and I just want to acknowledge his contributions to all of us as both residents and commuters here in the Bay Area. I'd like to ask that we adjourn our meeting in Will's honor. Will Travis was a great man and gave decades, most of his life, to protecting the Bay for all of us. That concludes our report. So I'll move over to report of the executive director.
Thank you, Vice Chair Moyer and directors. Thanks for those comments. Thanks for acknowledging the work that staff is doing. We are definitely hard at work making sure that we take advantage of opportunities like the Norwegian delegation being in town to recognize some of the progress that we're making and plans that we have for decarbonizing our system and really modeling that effort after what has already been done in Norway. Also, thanks for mentioning the ad, the advertising campaign. Really, the BART ad is is the handiwork of Alexis Matsui, and she's just offering day-to-day expertise in this area. We have a whole campaign that's gradually being rolled out, I think, at the perfect time as the weather is changing, and we can take advantage and really maximize the ridership potential that we have. We have an FY24 current fiscal year budget that really counts on ridership taking off here at the end of the year as we get into our peak season. And so far, we're seeing that come to fruition. So we'll hear more on that when we talk about the ridership and recovery report. But so far, so good. Those full parking lots and full vessels are evidence of that. I want to talk about the sea change for a bit. It's been a while since we had an update on the sea change, and happy to report that we've made it through half of the U.S. Coast Guard inspection that's required before we can be certified to operate the sea change. The second half of that inspection is scheduled for Monday. And we've been operating the vessel without incident for some time. So there has been a lot of progress that has been made fueling and operating. The crews are 100% trained to be able to operate this vessel. So even though there has been significant delay here, it hasn't come without progress. And we're looking forward to beginning the demonstration of the sea change hydrogen vessel here in short order once we receive that certification from the Coast Guard. So more to report on that, hopefully after Monday. The delay has resulted in some increase in the cost for the demonstration project, and that's reflected in the budget item that you'll be reviewing on today's agenda. It looks like it's going to require, instead of the originally authorized $500,000 contribution from WETA to complete the approximately $2 million demonstration project, we're budgeting for an additional $500,000 to reflect both the delay costs over the last year that we've incurred, and also the increased cost of hydrogen, which has really been spiking. If you've been following that at all or seen any reports, it's one of the things that we hope to learn through this demonstration project is what is the variability in the cost of hydrogen compared to other fuels. And since 2023, there has been a really significant increase in the cost of liquid natural gas and therefore hydrogen. So that is included in the budget. The next thing I want to do, I'll ask Mike Dougherty to come up and report on the progress from the Pilot Service Committee. This is proving to be a really effective group, and we have the latest to report on that.
Good afternoon. Mike Dougherty with Planning and Development. Pilot Service Committee, Directors Del Bono and Director Duke. Thank you so much for staffing the committee on the agency's behalf. We've met twice now, in January as well as last month in April. And just wanted to report to the full board and the public on some of the progress we've made in those two meetings, and absolutely offer you a chance to give your own perspective as well. So in the last two meetings, we've really kind of in part focused on what the role of the committee is and how the two directors would like to be involved in the staff decision making regarding pilot projects going forward. And so we've come up with a kind of initial list of roles that directors do and Del Bono would be playing on behalf of the board for our pursuit of pilot projects. First and foremost, prioritize the types of projects that we're pursuing and the types of partnerships that we're doing. So these are partnerships with cities, shipbuilders potentially, as well as employers or private companies that are interested in demoing ferry service on San Francisco Bay. Based on that direction, we'll periodically come back to this committee with a proposed work program. We've got a summary of that today that we'll walk through and look for input from the committee on that. Another, key role, I think, for this committee to play in advance of launching a project, we're going to be very deliberate about defining the goals and objectives for those projects. So when the project proceeds and we come to the conclusion of the project and we're kind of answering that question at the end of the day, was it successful? Was it not? Did we learn what we expected to learn? We're doing that from a fixed point of reference of these goals and objectives that we adopted for the project. And for example, we'll do the estuary water shuttle project in the next month or two. Next board meeting, we'll be coming to you with some of the goals and objectives that we have for that project. Another significant one that emerged in our discussions was ensuring that these projects have kind of a workforce development aspect to them, so that we're taking advantage of using these projects to train, build experience for our crews and operating alternate technologies and different types of services. So going beyond just testing these technologies and assessing the market potential of these services, really using the opportunity to train and gain experience for our crews as well. And then lastly, as we bring decisions forward on specific pilot projects, it's a chance for the committee to come up with its own recommendations to the full board concerning those decisions. Some just summary details of our relatively new pilot program that we anticipate operating for a long-term basis. In our 5-year Regional Measure 3 operating plan, we do set out an amount of money from RM3 on an annual basis to support the program. It's not enough to fully fund the program, but it's intended to be a seed of kind of seed money that would leverage other investment from public and private sources to pursue the pilot projects that we will pursue. So there's a summary of the money ranging between $2 million and $4 million, depending on the budget availability in a year. But that would be about the scale that we anticipate in the near term of the next 5 years. That would again be seed money to leverage other investment in the pilot program. And then the goals of the pilot program are really kind of developed through our service vision, our 2050 service vision and expansion policy, which you'll be taking action on today. And one of the key things that emerged through that process was that we heard from our stakeholders was the desire for this pilot service program. So again, the goals of the program broadly, test new technologies that could impact the feasibility or potential feasibility of new services on the Bay. In a lot of instances, we suspect that a new technology could make a service feasible, but we just don't have the operating data on it. It's a chance to field test some of those new technologies and potentially get that operating data, make a longer term investment with data. There's also an aspect of testing new markets. Ridership demand for ferry services, particularly along newly developed portions of the Bay shoreline, is notoriously difficult to project. So a lot of times you just have to test the service. So this gives us an opportunity again to get the data we need to make a long-term assessment service. And just a brief summary of the near-term work program that was vetted with the committee members. Over the course of the next fiscal year, so our immediate work-term program, medium-term work program, we have 3 projects that we're proposing to carry forward, and these are reflected in the budget that you'll see later in the meeting for the upcoming fiscal year. First is the Oakland Alameda Water Shuttle project. So this is a project that would provide a crossing between Oakland and Alameda on the estuary. It would operate 5 days a week, and we'd be doing this project in partnership with the city of Alameda, as well as some other local organizations in Alameda. You'll be hearing more about this next month as we bring forward the goals and objectives for the project to you, but it's been long in the works. We have an agreement. The last agreement required to launch the service is on the consent calendar today. If all goes as planned over the next month, we anticipate this service starting by the end of June. So really exciting. Second of three projects, again, another item you'll be seeing on the agenda today. And I'll just I'll defer most of the information about this item to Tom's presentation later. But the second project would be a limited duration ballpark service to Redwood City. The goal here would be to kind of build some enthusiasm, build some stakeholder support and engagement for what we're developing as a longer term Redwood City ferry service, but also use the opportunity to, in these limited ballpark runs that we're going to do, gain some actual operating experience in terms of travel time, vessel fit and whatnot that would support the development of the long service as well. And Tom will walk through more of our plan on that. And the third service, again, Seamus gave a little update on this one, would be the implementation of the Sea Change Zero Emission Fuel Cell Demonstration Project. So this is a project that we've has long been in the works, and we'll be hearing some more specific information about. Those are the near-term projects. We also, with the committee, kind of made a roadmap for future projects that we're going to develop. So as we're busy kind of launching these projects, we'll also simultaneously be working to define and scope the next year's projects, ideally. And so the future projects we've identified, and there's not a lot of specific information about what these would look like now. These are just the goals of what we're going to pursue. Would be potential short hop service between the ferry building and Pier 48.5. This would be a service that we don't currently have a vessel available for. And so we'd be working potentially with some of our partners, such as PropSF, to look at the feasibility of having them potentially bring in a vessel if the funding's available to operate the service between the ferry building and Pier 48.5 on a limited term basis. The Contra Costa pilot service. So this is, an initiative that came in part from the completion of the Contra Costa ferry expansion study. And there was an update on that in the EE report. That's a study that was recently concluded by the CCTA in Contra Costa County. And while it identified a lot of significant obstacles with operating conventional WETA service in the Contra Costa communities, it did kind of express or identify an interest or potential to study those routes as part of the WETA pilot program. So we would be working in partnership with their staff to scope out what a pilot service in Contra Costa County might look. And then the last two here, Vallejo and Larkspur, we see these as an opportunity to really test, in particular, some of the new vessel technology available. And one of the things we're interested in here that could be a good fit is testing foiling technology. And you'll see an example picture of a foiling vessel there. This is a situation where we could perhaps have a significant travel time advantage. Some of these potential longer haul routes that could make the service fundamentally more competitive and potentially more cost efficient to time. So more to come on all of these, but wanted to give you a summary of beyond the near-term projects that we're looking to develop over the course of the next year, what we'll be looking forward to further scoping and bringing to you. And that's the update on the pilot service committee, and certainly if Director Del Bono or Director Dewitt, if I missed anything or mischaracterized anything, please feel free to chime in.
No, I think that was a great summary of all of the work that we've been doing. So thank you.
Yeah, I agree with my board member over here. That's why I let you go first.
So I think those items will be discussed in one way or another when we talk about the budget, and because it is a feature of our FY25 budget that we want to highlight, and also the service vision, because there's a direct tie-in to the service vision and some of the ideas that we would be trying out as part of a pilot service. Thank you, Director Del Bono, Director Dew, for helping us along the way. We'll continue to regularly report out on the progress of the committee. Mike mentioned the Contra Costa ferry study. That's one item that we've been talking about regularly with the Contra Costa Transportation Authority. We've also been talking to the authority and WICTAC, the West Contra Costa Transportation Committee, about the Richmond ferry service. And I just wanted to make sure that the board is aware of those discussions. The Measure J funding that supports the Richmond ferry service supports a baseline level of service, and that's below what we operate today. We're supplementing the Measure J funding with RM3 to be able to operate even more service, including weekend service on the Richmond route, because we think that that route has potential for ridership growth, and it's demonstrated high demand. It's been one of the fastest routes to recover to pre-pandemic or close to pre-pandemic levels. And so we want to continue to do that. There's a gap between when Measure J funding runs out and when the county of Contra Costa would potentially reauthorize their half-cent sales tax that pays for that service. And the gap is about 2 years. It starts in 2032. And so the authority board commission asked the staff there to think about whether there would be a way to extend the Measure J dollars to cover the remaining 2 years, and they asked us what service cuts would potentially look like that would extend the service for those additional 2 years. And so we gave them an understanding of how our service works, how we pay for it, how it is in a largely fixed cost system, and it would be really hard to just have a small reduction in service to be able to address a 2-year gap that starts in 2032. We also clarified that Measure RM3 dollars are being used to supplement the service, and that we wouldn't want to reduce one funding source and not another. And then our recommendation is that we maintain the service levels that we're operating today, demonstrate to the residents of Contra Costa County and the riders that this is something valuable that they should want to continue, and that we shouldn't do anything to reduce service on this route now to solve a potential problem that might happen in 2032. There are lots of things that are planned to happen, could happen between now and then, that would help, that would make sure we're not faced with that fiscal cliff when we get there. So I think that that message has been well received by both WICTAC and the CCTA. No worries about us needing to cut service or them reducing their Measure J dollars at this point, but we wanted to make sure that the board is aware that those conversations have happened.
The staff report that CCTA has developed, or the report, the study, does that reflect San Francisco Bay Ferries views, or just that there's a gap and they are content or proposing to reduce service? Just that
there's a gap, and they were looking to evaluate what a service reduction might look like. That's the only thing that's been done.
Okay.
Okay, with that, you have reports on the financial statements and the federal legislative update. We have our state legislative advocates, Matt Robinson and Michael Pimentel, on the line, and they're going to provide us with a brief summary of everything that's happening in Sacramento. I think I'll turn it to Matt.
Thank you, Seamus and directors. It's good to see you all. Sorry we couldn't be down there in person. That was our plan, but my wife unfortunately came down with COVID, so doing a lot of running around this week. Just to cut to it, we are sort of in a little bit of a lull in Sacramento, and I only say that to mean the policy committee work in the first house has concluded, and so we are waiting for the fiscal committees to finish hearing bills. Most bills that they're hearing are going to what they refer to as the suspense file. And those are bills that have a fiscal impact to the state of California. It's a pretty low bar. I think it's 50,000 in the Assembly and 100,000 in the Senate. So it doesn't take much to end up on that file. Those suspense hearings will occur in about a week on the 16th of May. We expect them to happen right after session. And there are several pieces of legislation that we've been tracking for you. 2 of those we'll come back to in just a moment. And then the next big deadline that we're staring down is the House of Origin deadline. That just means the Assembly bills have to get out of the Assembly and get to the Senate, and vice versa. And that deadline is May 24th. So about 2 weeks or so left in kind of the first house work, and then we go with legislation that is still moving to the other house, and we sort of repeat the process, all leading to summer recess, which will happen on July 3rd this year, when they go on that month-long break and then come back and have a mad dash to the finish, where they'll wrap up some fiscal committee business and then have floor session onlys, and they are scheduled to adjourn on the 31st of August this year. But in the meantime, some big news will be coming tomorrow. The governor is set to release, I'm going to say this, the first part of the May revise. This year, we think it's going to be coming in 2 pieces. Tomorrow's announcement is probably going to hit the highlights, though, including updated numbers for the deficit, what the governor is proposing, either through delays in funding, more cuts to funding, et cetera, to solve that deficit. And if at all, he is proposing, revenues to support the existing state spending programs. And that matters because what we have seen happen so far in sort of an early action was the delay of a portion of the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program funding that was committed last year. So just as a refresher, $4 billion over 2 years was initially committed to transit agencies. That goes out on a population basis. The Bay Area receives $1.2 billion of the transit fiscal cliff / capital assistance funding. And so instead of doing 2 billion and 2 billion, they're going to do 2, 1, and 1. But also more recently, we actually saw DOF take an action to freeze the release of the first tranche of that funding for a period of time. We've heard reports of 60 days. It could come out sooner. And so we're keeping an eye on that. Michael Pimentel, my colleagues on the phone, will touch a little bit more on, what efforts are at play to try to get the administration to let that funding go sooner rather than later, so that the transit agencies that have begun to build their budgets around the receipt of that funding, or are trying to leverage significant federal dollars from the IIJ in order to support projects, can hopefully have those funds released sooner rather than later. But outside of that, on Tuesday of next week, I said the May revise in 2 parts. That's when we expect, that's the 14th, which is normally the date the governor releases the May revise. We'll see sort of the back of the budget items, a lot of the details, the not very exciting stuff, I guess, if you will be released on Tuesday. And as we usually do, we'll get a report to SF Bay Ferry staff to really understand any impacts that may be coming from the governor's May revise release. Once he puts that out, though, we are in sort of another mad dash to get the budget done by June 15th. The legislature and the governor will have to agree to a spending plan. The legislature is constitutionally required to send that downstairs, or now it's upstairs, I guess, to the governor by the 15th, and the state fiscal year begins on July 1st. Though what has been past practice is we sort of get a sketch of the agreement, and then we see things like budget bill juniors and trailer bills that may come later in the summer, amending aspects of the budget. And so I think that's what we're in for this year as well. But we'll keep you all apprised in real time of any developments that break through the staff at SF Bay Ferry. And now, Michael, if you wouldn't mind just touching on what we're doing to try to spring that funding free. And Michael also talk about WETA's, SF Bay Ferry sponsored bill, and then kick it back to me for one final item.
All right. Well, thank you, Madam Director. It's good to be with you this afternoon. On the spending freeze, Matt touched on the pause of the release of $2.4 billion in funding to California transit agencies. As he noted, that is a temporary freeze. And as the administration has continued to communicate to us, there was an anticipation to release that funding as budget conversations continue. And there's some clarity on the direction that the state will ultimately take to resolve the budget deficit. The reason why folks are engaged, and when I say folks, I mean primarily the transit industry is engaged in looking to move those dollars forward through the California Transit Association and allied stakeholders, is a concern that as the temporary freeze remains in place and budget discussions begin in earnest, recognizing that the budget picture may worsen come the release of tomorrow's May revise, we may find ourselves not simply facing a freeze, but rather a cut. And so there is a strong interest in moving those dollars out the door as quickly as possible. On April 30th is when the freeze went to place. On May 2nd is when the California Transit Association submitted its letter to the administration urging the immediate release of those dollars. Through the association, there has been coordination of responses from agencies across state to communicate to the legislature and the administration the importance of the funding that was slated to be released, with a specific eye on the operational investments that are being put on hold, but also to the impacts of capital projects that Matt alluded to, albeit briefly. One of the chief areas of concern is, as Matt had noted, the potential for federal dollars provided by the IIJA to no longer come together and for the state of California because local agencies wouldn't be able to demonstrate their local match. And that is something that is a time-sensitive consideration, given that we're heading toward the November election. There may be a change in administration, and the Republican candidate has indicated his interest in potentially freezing discretionary investments across various agencies and departments, which could impact DOT's programs. And so as we continue, happy to take any questions on the freeze, but just know that there is a heightened effort to release those monies in advance of the finalization of the budget. And I do want to pivot very briefly to the sponsored bill that SF Bay Ferry is leading. It's AB 2061. It would provide a sales and use tax exemption for the purchase of zero-emission ferries by public transit agencies. That bill is on in the Appropriations Committee pending hearing. We do anticipate, due to its fiscal impact, it will be on the Appropriations Committee's suspense file. And there is ongoing effort underway that we're leading on your behalf to work to release that bill from the suspense file so that it can move on to the Assembly floor and ultimately to the Senate. And so I'm going to conclude there and welcome any questions or comments after we turn it over to Matt to cover our remaining item. So thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. This will be brief. I know you have a lengthier discussion on the item further down the agenda, but I did want to provide just an update on where the regional measure is, SB 1031, in process. That bill is set to be heard in the Appropriations Committee in the Senate on the 13th. It seems it is going to be moving to that same suspense file that we both touched on. And then we will see on the 16th, whether or not it moves off suspense. I expect it will, in order to give the authors more time to work out some of the elements of the bill. There could be some amendments that come into print this week related to some of the conditions that were placed on the measure when it left Senate transportation by Chair Cortese. So we will get those amendments around once they show up in print. Those are pretty, I guess, technical amendments, you could call them. There are some limitations on when the measure would have to go on the ballot. There are some limitations on, the use of sales tax and on some of the oversight over transit, sort of historical transit formula funding, if you will. But other than that, I think largely the SB 1031 will remain intact. And so if it leaves appropriations, it will go to the floor. The author has opportunities to continue to amend the bill before it's voted off of the Senate floor by that May 24th deadline. But as far as what amendments may be coming, we haven't been made privy to anything. And so we will wait and see. And I'm sure you can get an update from the presentation later on today about some of the things that are in the works on SB 1031. So Seamus, Mr. Murphy, that concludes our report. And as Michael said, we are more than happy to take any questions you all may have for us. And I just want to say it's good to see you, Sly.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Michael. Let's pause before we go to the ridership report, see if the board has any questions on the state legislative update.
Chair Wenderman, any questions from you? None in the room.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Let me hand it over to Joe Ramey to get us started on the operations and ridership recovery report.
Directors, Joe Ramey with operations. Just here to give you a quick update on ridership or the performance rather. So WETA's on-time performance and service reliability continues to remain high over the first 4 months of 2024, and we're outperforming that same period in 2023. On-time performance averaged 98.1% system-wide January through April, compared to 97.2% for the same period in 2023. So an increase of about a percentage point over last year. Service reliability averaged 99.2% system-wide January through April this year, compared to 98.8% the same period in 2023. So again, a slight increase of about half a percentage point. There were a total of 141 trip segments canceled in January through April combined, compared to about 16,500 trip segments provided. So canceled trips represent just about 1% of total scheduled trips during this period. The number of canceled trips has steadily declined over the last 4 months, from about 50 trips in January just down to 5 trips in April. So about a 99.9% reliability. So you can't do much better than that. We think, a lot of the early cancellations in January, February were a kind of an unusual mix of mechanical issues and weather in February, but we're tightening up our maintenance program. We think that's what's responsible for some of this decline in cancellations. That I'll take any questions.
Director? Yeah. Good work. Yeah. Like it.
Very briefly on the second half of the more report with ridership. Gabe, I can't make it today. We locked him in his office working on a very important grant. So I'll fill in for him. But I actually take the opportunity to thank him, as well as Arthur on our staff. It's subtle in the report, but they've been working for several months on automating some of the reports. And so we have a lot more capability now, and also a lot more reliability in the data because it's not manually calculated anymore. So human error is taken out of the equation. So we do have a lot of flexibility. If there's any feedback now or in the future about things you'd like to see or types of charts, the way we present them, let me know. And we do have a lot of flexibility to change those to meet your need. In terms of the ridership itself, the numbers agree with the anecdotes. We are getting closer back to normal. So April, we were on target with our budgeted ridership. And so that put us at about 80% recovery of April compared to April 2019. Consistent pattern from previous months that's outperforming the other significant regional transit operators, BART and Caltrain in particular, in terms of regional performance. And meeting the expectations of the growth in ridership we're projecting to see last month, this month, and then into June to close out that point. So happy to answer any questions on ridership you have.
Director?
Just a quick, and I love the new charts. It's easy to see the trends and everything. Whatever we can do to blow up the text would be fantastic, or at least just annual. It was something to show. It's really hard to see months, dates, values. I need better glasses. But other than that, it's great. So thank you.
We'll work on some formatting and see if we can make more.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Vice Chair Moyer, that concludes the executive director report.
Great. Thank you very much. Directors, any other questions or comments on the executive director's report?
No. Let me see if there was any.
Wonderman, anything from you?
No, it's a great report. I learned a lot. I'll keep it to myself. I just learned that Governor Newsom's right hand, Jason Elliott, is resigned. You see that?
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know if it means a lot to us. It means a lot to a lot of people. So a lot of us worked with him over the years. But no, that was a great report. I'm moved by how much we're doing, and I really like the the engagement in DC and Sacramento, and I feel like we're hitting it on a lot of different cylinders, and we got a few challenges out there. So it's a good report.
thank you.
Thank you.
Withdraw.
No, I can. Nothing major.
Right, great. Melanie, anyone from the public that wants to speak?
Nobody has signed up this.
Okay, so that takes us then to the consent calendar. There are 4 items on the consent calendar. Do any of the directors want to separate an item? Okay. Anyone want to offer a motion?
For the motion and approval.
I'll second.
Right, bless you. All right. Do I need to ask for public comment? Yeah, okay. Any public comment on the consent calendar?
I would like to speak.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear me? My name is Russ. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, I'm a citizen. I live here in Vallejo. I catch the ferry quite often, and I was wondering, when I used to work, I worked out of the federal building, but will they ever have a ferry service that goes between Vallejo and Oakland? And would they have a ferry service that would, go to the Chase Center for events or, the basketball games, just like they do for the baseball game?
Great. Those are great questions. And so we are going to talk about our 2050 service vision and expansion policy under item 11. And that's where you might get a little bit more insight on what our vision is to answer that question.
2050, I'll be dead by then. Hey, I stopped work. I retired over
Okay. Thank you, sir.
12 years ago, and I was Oakland firefighter, but I worked out of the NICRIC, the Fusion Center on 450 Golden Gate for, about 8 years toward the end of my career. So, but I think the ferry is fantastic. I mean, I'm a big fan of it. I go to use it a lot to go to UC for my, medical appointments or even over to visit Daryl, but I would definitely like to see it run later, I don't know how.
If I may, sir, we have an item on this later. Right now, we're on the item 6, which is our consent calendar, which is our ordinance and other items. So we'll definitely entertain your comments when we get down to the other item. And I assure you that it's not going to be out to 2050. It's a longer term vision plan. So if we could call for the vote on the consent calendar, please. Sure. Here, Wonderman.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Vice Chair Boyer,
Yes.
Director Alba,
Yes.
Director Del Bodo,
Yes.
and Director Duke.
Yes.
Great, perfect. Okay, that brings us to item number 7, which is the approve the Redwood City Ballpark Service.
Yeah.
So as Mike alluded to during his presentation on the pilot service committee, we have an item for your consideration. I did want to acknowledge the work that Mike and his team have done. We wanted to give him a little break since he has like 10 items on the agenda. He really should be up here co-presenting. So as Mike described, the pilot service committee established principles for considering pilot programs. Agency has obviously been working for a number of years with the Port of Redwood City and other stakeholders in San Mateo County to look at the feasibility of the long-term ferry service coming out of Redwood City to the East Bay and San Francisco. That service is included in the 2050 service vision that you'll consider today. And in talking to the Port of Redwood City, there was definitely mutual interest from both the port and us in testing a pilot service using our vessels and using our crews that would eventually be serving Redwood City. So that was an important consideration going in, is that in making this pilot service work, we wanted to try it with our larger vessels to go really nice speeds for that distance that we're covering. In order to meet our operational challenges and barriers in terms of vessel availability, the number of vessels we have, the number of crews that are available, we focused on weekends because obviously we're running less service on weekends typically, so we have a little more flexibility there. And that helps us avoid a lot of operational constraints, not just with crews and vessels, but also docking availability at terminals here in San Francisco. The plan as it stands is to offer 5 round trips over the course of the back half of the Giants season on weekend afternoon Giants games at Orso Park. we've focused in on Sundays because the port runs an exciting concert series at the port on Saturdays during the summer. So we wanted to avoid any access issues related to that. So we're focused on Sundays. The expected travel times for this service between Redwood City and the ballpark are roughly equivalent to the Vallejo ballpark service, about 60 minutes. We are going to test that before we offer the service to make sure we're leaving on time to pitch. Port of Redwood City met with representatives from Bloomberg Fleet and the agency a couple weeks ago in Redwood City to take a look at the docking facilities, parking facilities, and everything. The port is planning to make some minor upgrades to dock, which is the most suitable berth at the port of Redwood City, just to ensure that we can safely tie up there. The plan is that we would offer this service via our anchor operating system that we use ticket for other special event services to the ballpark and the Chase Center, and for all of our other ticketing needs that are non-Clipper. That would keep things nice and simple. We wouldn't have to introduce a new ticketing system for this. We're experienced in selling these types of tickets, so and the crews are as well. So found that would be the best way to do this. We're initially planning to set and asking for your guidance on this to set the fares at all Vallejo ballpark fares. Those are listed in the reason being it's similar distance, similar cost to operate. We would anticipate. And so for weekend games, we do typically come pretty close to selling out those Vallejo goes to the ballpark. So while the cost is a little bit higher, if you compare it to driving and parking, especially at Oracle Park, contest. So we feel that there's sufficient demand. The port is obviously interested in finding ways to ensure that folks that can't afford that ticket price still have an opportunity to take the ferry. So we're ready to work with them, their tenants at the port and the city of Redwood City to identify ways to potentially offset some costs through sponsorships. If one of the tenants wanted to sponsor the service at a certain level, we could include that as part of the offset for the cost of running the service and decrease the fares appropriately. Or we could set aside some tickets for each of the 5 games to allow the city to work with CBOs in the community to identify lower income families that would take advantage of those and potentially package those with game tickets to really make a special experience for those families. The pilot service is intended to be cost neutral, so we are planning to charge for the service to offset the costs of running it, fuel, crewing, and the marketing and their costs that would be associated with it. We anticipate those costs being $45,000, which is a relatively small drop in the bucket in our FY25 budget. We did want to highlight that. That includes the 5 round trips in addition to 2 fit ups before the service begins to make sure that the transit time is right and that we can dock safely at Redwood City. And marketing costs, because we definitely want to get the word out and create a lot of demand for this. It's estimated, as I mentioned, that we recover those costs with the proposed ticket price. The timing of the pilot dates are really meant to avoid dock conflicts at Oracle Park. For anyone who's taken the ferry service to Oracle Park on evening games, you know that the Vallejo riders leave 20 minutes after the last pitch, which is the earliest we can expect people to get from the ballpark out to the ferry terminal. And the Oakland and Alameda service leaves 35 minutes after. We didn't want to tack another departure 45, 55 minutes after that. It's already pretty tricky getting 2 boats in and out of there. And so we focused on day games where we don't offer direct service from the East Bay currently. So we're focused on those Sunday afternoon games, the 1:05 starts. Because we have flexibility at Oracle Park at that time, we're running the ballpark short hop for those games. So there's one trip that leads back to downtown San Francisco 20 minutes after the last out. The other one is an hour after the last route. Basically, when that boat gets back to pick up stragglers to take them to the ferry building. There's a nice window in there where 35 minutes after the last out, we can have that boat head down to Redwood City. So that's the purpose of choosing a time slot where we don't typically have direct service anywhere else except for the ferry. And then vessel selection, we're going to try to do fit ups on 2 different types of boats, a Dorado class vessel, and then potentially a propeller boat, Hydros class vessel, to test our assumptions about travel times and see how much of a difference that extra speed makes. We can't guarantee that we can do that because we're going to have to do these fit ups on weekdays, and vessel availability will drive it there. We have a recommendation in front of you today to approve the new program and authorize the executive director to enter the first agreement for Redwood City. The plan from there would be to do fit ups and the transit time tests at first opportunity, potentially next week. Work with the port to make sure those dock improvements are in place. Do any additional fit ups once dock improvements are in place in June if necessary. Start ticket sales once we know that the boat can dock there safely and everything is signed and dotted. That's when we would really do a big public push, which we haven't done yet. We want to make sure it's ironclad before we start selling tickets. And then, of course, marketing that service. The first potential game that we're looking at is July 14th against the Twins. And then we have 4 more after that between July and August and September. Happy to ask any questions unless they're too specific, in which case I'll make it here to.
Directors, any questions?
I just think it's great.
Yeah.
It's awesome. So I'm looking forward to seeing it happen.
Yeah, can't wait to get on the ferry to one of the games in August or September. Yeah, fantastic.
Chair Wonderman, any questions from you?
No, thank you. No questions here.
I have a quick one. I presume by the cost, but I presume it's the berth in Redwood City is an active berth and there's no dredging required.
That's correct. And that's what will be, yes, that is correct.
Okay, perfect. And I just want to say for record that I think this is extremely thoughtful and strategic the way it's fashioned, and I really want to commend everybody that worked on it. Likely the 2 hands that are raised as well for the effort. So thank you for that creativity. So Melanie, has anyone besides the 2 hands that are raised? Well,
Yep,
5 hands that are raised, signed up to speak? One's on the screen. All right. So Trish Wagner, would you like to start us off with public comment?
Oh, 1 moment.
All right, Trish, I'm not quite off mute yet unless it's on your end.
There you go.
I'm unmuted now. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Wonderman and fellow board members. I'm Trish Wagner, the Business Development Manager for the Port of Redwood City. Today is a wonderful day as we move even closer to our future ferry service at the port. We are especially grateful for our partnership with WETA over the last several years and have advanced the ferry project and accomplished several key milestones, including most recently the business plan. And now we're moving into the CEQA process and permitting stages. So we're very excited to offer the pilot ferry initiative this summer and engage with the community while providing the ferry service to and from the Giants games. Personally, as a local resident, I'm excited about it. And we just appreciate your leadership and creativity in bringing people to the water. Our partnership is key in how we deliver these first-class waterborne transportation services for our community. So thank you for your consideration today.
All right, Greg Greenway.
Thank you. I feel like 5 hands says it all. I'm Greg with Seaport Industrial Association, which is a business association of pretty much all the industrial businesses and tenants of the Port of Redwood City. We could not be more supportive of this pilot project. As a bit of personal background, on behalf of SIA, Seaport Industrial Association, I was active in the early 2000s in a group called the Water Transit Advocates for San Mateo County. That was a group of elected officials, all kinds of stakeholders throughout the county. And we agreed back then in the mid 2000s to throw our support behind South San Francisco service because there was a lot of corporate support, ready-made customer base with Genentech. And the idea back then was that if we demonstrate success in South City, then we would have ferry service in Redwood City by 2012. We're still here, and we continue to be super enthusiastic about service coming to Redwood City. You will not find a community on the bay that would want this more. There's a huge audience, a huge customer base for service between Redwood City, Oakland, San Francisco. You know, as you know, the Port of Redwood City is the only deep water port in the South Bay. It is the point of contact on the bay to and from Silicon Valley. And so on behalf of Seaport Industrial Association, industrial businesses, this is completely compatible with what we do, and we can't wait for it to come. I'm going to wear another hat for 1 second and say I'm also on the board of Chamber San Mateo County. There has been overwhelming support for Redwood City Ferry Service within the chamber, within the San Mateo County business community for a couple of decades. This has been a priority for us. You know, some of the companies that are very near the port, as you know, and would use ferry service, Stanford, Kaiser, Google, Meta. As Trish said, as a member of the community, everyone would love ferry service to come to Redwood City. And so my message to you is thank you so much for doing this. This pilot project is fantastic. I'm somewhat confident that the Giants can win all those games. And yeah, bring it on. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Loriana Castro?
Hello, Chair Wonderman, Vice Chair Moyer, and all of the, I should say San Francisco Bay Ferry Board. I am Loriana Kastrup, and I have the privilege of serving as chairman of the board of the Redwood City Port Commission this year. This is my final year on the Port Commission after 16 years. I've worked on the ferry project this entire time. Again, as Greg Greenway said, on the San Mateo County Water Advocates and other stakeholder committees. So I'm very, very pleased that you are considering this pilot project to the Giants games this summer, and I thank you for the staff collaboration on it. We have, as Greg stated, a lot of pent-up enthusiasm in our community. I talk to people all the time. As a port commissioner, the number one question I'm asked by the public is, when are we going to get the ferry? They know that it's part of our taxes, our transportation taxes. They know that they've supported it all along, and they're really anxious for it. So I think this will garner enthusiasm as well as get some key takeaways on data, as stated by the staff report, on how successful this ferry can be. I'm also excited about, to add to Greg's comments about the social equity issue of offering an opportunity to get out on the bay and have a pleasant experience for people in our community who may have never been on a boat on the water. And this is a really good way for some kids in our community to have an experience that they'll never forget. So I'm excited about going out and getting some corporate sponsorship for the ballpark tickets and the ferry tickets. And I think we're gonna fill those, but we're gonna overflow those boats. People are going to be surprised at how fast they fill up. So I'm very enthusiastic, and thank you again for your support on this project.
Thank you, Commissioner. Don Cecil?
Hi, good afternoon. Don Cecil, representing Samsita. Roseanne Faust can't be here, sends her best. This is, I think, another great example of the creativity that comes out of the professional staff and the board in this organization. And what a bargain. I mean, for a very, very modest cost, this is going to be an exceptional pilot that I hope proves as a sustainable idea. So bravo, Samsita supports it, and let us know how we can help.
Perfect. Thank you very much for the support. Robert Rogers?
Hello, good afternoon. I'm pretty much echoing the sentiments of what's already been said today. But good afternoon, Chair Wonderman and members of the board. My name is Robert Rogers, and I am speaking on behalf of the Bay Planning Coalition. I am here to voice our support for the Redwood City Ballpark Service Pilot Project. For background, BPC represents over 150 organizations dedicated to the economic and environmental sustainability of the San Francisco Bay region. This pilot project gives an excellent opportunity to gauge feasibility and garner support for the implementation of a permanent Redwood City ferry terminal and ferry service. In addition to raising public support for a permanent terminal, this pilot project would provide insight on valuable data that would help the ferry service better understand the costs associated with a permanent project. In conclusion, I urge the board to approve the Redwood City Ballpark Service Pilot Project. thank you for your considering our support for this project.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Marty Udishi, if I said that correctly.
Yes, Udicious. Hi, my name is Marty Udicious. I'm with the Bear Island Aquatic Center, BIAC, a 501c3 nonprofit of about 275 human-powered users of Redwood Creek and the Port of Redwood City, including kayakers, stand-up paddleboarders, and rowers. I wanted to make the WETA board aware, if it's not already, that relating to future ferry service on most any given morning during commute hours, there are upwards of 150 people on the water on Redwood Channel in human-powered vessels that are very susceptible to waves and wakes. Hence us human-powered users being out there early before the winds and waves come up. Additionally, relevant to ferry service to Giants games, dependent on weather and waves, human-powered users of Redwood Creek and the Port of Redwood City could be out at any time of the day or night. Our vessels can be easily swamped by the wake from something as small as a small fishing boat. And while many of the powered vessel users on Redwood Creek are aware of and courteous about the frailty of us human-powered users' vessels, not all powered users are as courteous. Just last week, a boat with 9 high school age rowers aboard was swamped, resulting in, at a minimum, a very disrupted morning practice for those rowers and their families. I'd urge the board to please keep in mind that water taxis and human-powered vessels can be incompatible. However, there are many mitigation measures that can be put into place to ensure proper separation between vessels, their wakes, and human-powered users. We are ready and willing to work with WETA to ensure maximum safety for all users of Redwood Creek and the Port of Redwood City. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Important point. Thank you for joining us today. Are there any other public speakers?
There's no one else who has raised their hand or.
Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second. All right. Melanie?
Chair Wonderman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moyer,
Yes.
Director Alba,
Yes.
Director Del Pomo,
Yes.
Director Jeter.
Yes.
Dottie.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to item 8, California Senate Bill 1031, Connect Bay Area Act.
Thanks, Vice Chair Moyer. I'll tee this up and I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca Long from MTC to walk us through the latest on this piece of legislation and how it came together, what it would do for the region, what it would do for San Francisco Bay Ferry. It's the latter that we're most concerned with. This bill is designed to authorize a measure to be put on the ballot that would principally help bail out transit agencies that are facing an immediate fiscal cliff because of the ongoing impacts of the pandemic and prevent them from cutting service in a really significant way that would have profoundly negative consequences for the region. But the ballot measure and this legislation does more than that. The measure also would help advance some of the network management efforts that the region has been discussing to better integrate transit services around the region. This board was the first, I believe, of all of the transit agencies to endorse the Seamless Bay Area principles, and those principles are largely encompassed in the work of the network management functions that have been put into place at the regional level, primarily by MTC. This bill would help advance some of those even further and would commit the region to pursuing some of the customer-related outcomes associated with those. It would also require the state to conduct a study that would look at consolidation of Bay Area transit agencies. And those two pieces, those two elements of the legislation have drawn a lot of attention, but principally this legislation would create a authorization for a regional measure that would address the fiscal cliff for some of our largest transit agencies that were supported before the pandemic primarily by Farebox. We would be one of those agencies if it weren't for the Regional Measure 3 revenue that we receive. And the MTC staff who has helped to create this legislation and secure support from authors in Sacramento to move it forward recognize that there needed to be something in here geographically for other transit agencies that aren't facing an immediate fiscal cliff, but still we need to see something out of this measure to be in support of it. I can say that we would benefit in a really meaningful way from a guaranteed $25 million per year operating support. That's obviously really meaningful if you put it into the context of RM3, where we get up to $35 million a year. We would also be eligible to compete for the transit capital program that would be authorized by the measure. And I think all of the discussion that we've had so far about the network management principles and how much benefit there is potentially for us as a regional service speaks for itself. So I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca to give us a little bit more flavor on the legislation and where it stands now. And then, of course, would be glad to respond to question or comments from the board. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Great. Thank you, Seamus, and good afternoon, Chair Wonderman, Vice Chair Moyer. I'm Rebecca Long, Director of Legislation and Public Affairs at MTC, and I just really want to thank the staff for putting this on the agenda and commend the report, which is very concise and comprehensive. So yeah, this is a very big deal. SB 1031, MTC is sponsoring it. Do want to, state, which we have publicly many times, we did not ask for the consolidation language to be in the bill, but when you go to Sacramento, you have to roll with the punches. So that has been a quite contentious component of the bill. I can share that in the amendments, which we do expect to see in print tomorrow, there will be some changes related to that consolidation provision. A lot of operators have taken an opposed position on the bill, unfortunately, as a result of that. And so some operators have been, providing suggested amendments. And I think some portion of that will be reflected in the upcoming amendments. The staff report notes that at the Senate Transportation Committee, a number of additional changes were agreed to, and some of those are quite significant and how they will affect the bill. So just to kind of step back and give you a little bit more flavor of what the bill does, it's kind of modeled on the legislation that we sponsored a few years ago to stand up the Bay Area Housing Finance Authority, or BAFA. And in that legislation, this new entity was created. It has the same governance as MTC, but it's a separate entity, and it was authorized to have a menu of revenue options to put before the voters, one of which is a general obligation bond. It also includes a parcel tax as an option and some others. And so building on that, we knew that we have a very big problem to solve. The estimated transit operating deficit alone is around $600 million. And those are MTC's standardized numbers. Some operators will say that it's even larger than that. We did an analysis of kind of standardizing all of the assumptions like vacancy rates, escalation, et cetera. And so I think it's, a maybe conservative assumption that is where we're going to be at, is about a $600 million gap based on 2022 service levels. So it's a very big problem to solve. And so we looked at what are some revenue mechanisms that could, generate at least $1 billion a year. And so sales tax is one item on the menu. We also have a payroll tax on the menu, a parcel tax, and then there's a proposal for a registration fee, if that's something that is doable down the road. It's not viable in the near term because of challenges that the DMV has. In any case, one of the amendments that was agreed to at the Senate Transportation Committee was to put a cap on the sales tax so that the maximum amount that could be put before the voters is a 0.5 cent, and that raises approximately $1 billion a year. But again, I described the constraints we have with the transit operating gap. We also have other improvements that we want to make, right? Not just backfill for, the status quo. And so the way that the bill is structured right now, it does have a number of different programs, including Safe Streets is a program that is envisioned to be a direct
subventions so that folks are getting money back, in proportion to what they're contributing in to improve local streets and roads, make roads safer for biking and walking, and all of that. And then there's a connectivity program that is to invest in capital improvements, as was referenced in the in the memo. That's something that is also envisioned to be distributed in proportion to how much counties are generating. And then the transit category is also for transit transformation to really continue the work that we began during the pandemic to better integrate fares, improve just the overall rider experience. So there's great ambition, and then how much can we actually get done with the revenue envelope? So one of the big challenges that we're navigating, in Sacramento right now is sort of this sense of geographic equity and return to source. And a lot of conversations are ongoing with, Senator Wiener and others. So, I think the bill that is before you that's in print is going to change as just described and listed in the memo. In terms of those amendments that have been agreed to, there, is some potential for it to change further, I think, in the direction of providing, even more sort of return to source from a geographic standpoint. And, MTC, obviously, as the regional agency, we just want to make sure that we are still achieving the core goals of the legislation, which is to, ensure that our transit agencies can continue to provide reliable, convenient service, and that MTC can continue to strengthen regional coordination, which I also just want to commend the staff memo for highlighting, that benefits all transit systems, because riders use more than one system oftentimes in a trip, and having it be connected is going to help attract more people to use transit, which will help all of us. So just thank the staff for putting this on the agenda for a support position, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Directors, any questions or comments?
I got comments, but I don't know if you want me to wait now.
Go.
Well, okay. Hi, Rebecca. But I'm supportive of the bill, specifically because of the consolidation language in it. And I'm obviously sit on a board for a transit operator, and I predominantly use public transportation now, which I'm fortunate enough to be in a city that allows me to connect, but I also have to connect to Contra Costa, where my daughters are at. And I'm in favor of the bill because I think it's important to support all our agencies, but in transit agencies. But I do want to point out that, and without specifically pointing out one agency or singling out anybody, a lot of times some of the public transportation agencies that I use aren't clean. They're not safe. They're not reliable. And I wouldn't, at times put my daughters on some of them to come to the city because of some of the stuff that has happened in the past, year or 2 years or so on some of these public transportation modes of transportation that we use in the Bay Area. And that's unfortunate, because being born and raised here and being able to go to other cities, not just in the United States, but around the world, and see how advanced most systems are, I think we're way behind the times. So I just want to put that out as a board member, because I have the opportunity to actually say what I want to say sitting here. But I really would encourage MTC and our state legislators to look at consolidation of all our agencies to make it not just seamless, but improve accountability, and would totally be in favor of continuing to support the equity part of it, but the seamless part of it. But also, I think it's important to start looking at these boards that are elected boards and not appointed boards, because I think that makes a big difference. If we're here on this board, we're focused on transportation, ferry system, and I think a lot of our boards that are elected get off on other roads and means and focus that don't involve the transportation agencies that they're representing, and dive into other avenues of politics in the world. So I fully encourage the state and MTC to continue to talk, but I would like to see more consolidation, more opportunity for seamless transportation, but also to get away from having elected boards at our transit agencies and looking at maybe a model of appointing boards instead of electing boards. And those are my comments for now. I'm supportive of the bill. I'm supportive of this agenda item. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, probably. Thank you, Director Del Bono, for sharing how you feel. I know this is a very contentious issue across the region, especially the consolidation part. And I think ultimately we're all here to put more people on transit and having a better seamless transportation system where people can rely on their own feet, their own bike, transit. And right now, it's hard to do that with the fragmented system that we have. And coordination is the first step. In a phased approach, consolidation is part of the journey that the region must be on. And it's hard. It's really, really hard. But with phased approaches and clear, transparent timelines and goals that need to be achieved during these transitions, we need to get there. We can't have 27 plus transit agencies that are all doing the same thing, but for their own little boundary. And it's very, very tricky. But I'm supportive of what Director Del Bono just said, that being an elected or an appointed board, we're here for this, for the region, what's best for our riders. And I think we have a lot of work to do as a region. So I support this effort too, knowing how contentious it is and knowing how difficult it is, but we need to move towards better coordination and eventually consolidation.
Chair Wonderman has his hand up.
Chair Wonderman?
Yeah, thank you for bringing this forward and having the presentation. And Rebecca, the region has its hands full. I think we're facing very deep challenges in terms of mass transit, and that's not a surprise to anybody. And I think our agency's been fortunate. Oh, so sorry. Really sorry.
You're fine.
My phone is set up to interfere when somebody calls me during Zoom. I can't figure out how to fix that. The problem is very complex, and I think it behooves us all to try to solve it. I'm going to abstain on this measure because there's really two Jim Wondermans who are here. So there's the WETA chair, Jim Wonderman, and I think to the points that have been made, it's hard to argue that WETA shouldn't support this. I mean, WETA needs funding. As much as WETA compared to other agencies is a well-funded agency, we've all done the analysis. And if we follow the plans towards the future that we'll be talking about later, we just have more time than other agencies before we hit our own cliff. And so, I think it makes sense. I think it's inherent upon all of us to find funding for transportation that works, which is a combination of operating funds and capital funds. So, and one of the things we did when we did Regional Measure 3 was we made the toll measures that came to WETA fungible between operating and capital. We were very intentional about that because who knows what kind of money you're really going to need and when that's the case. The Bay Area Council, which is the other Wonderman, is trying to get to yes on this bill. So I've met with Senator Wiener, Senator Cortese, Senator Glazer, who are part of a subcommittee that Pro Tem McGuire appointed to sort of take in information on this. And so I've had those conversations, and I've had sidebar conversations, and we have concerns about a number of aspects of the bill. And without stipulating, Rebecca said what they were. They are the multiplicity of potential funding sources. We think some of those funding sources are just not something that should happen, that would be damaging to the regional economy. And we have some concerns about, where and how the money goes and geographic distributions, returns to, the way return to source is done, and the employer responsibility. So we want to work on these issues. I would hope we could get there. I think the potential of passing a measure in today's environment is very, very difficult. I don't know if we'll be in this environment in a couple of years. By the time it gets to 2026, maybe it'll be a whole new world. And we'll be able to, we'll see things differently. But to Director Delbano's points that he made, some things he said and some things he was trying to say and didn't want to be direct in saying, was, there isn't overwhelming level of confidence in the system. And it's hard. It's when we were doing the faster measure right before the pandemic, we were doing a lot of polling and focus groups, and at that time, when things were more positive than they are now, what we found was that there was support in the public for transportation. We weren't talking about operating funds at that point so much. We were talking about capital, but there was, you sort of lost the public on the issues you raised about the way, about the seamlessness or lack of in the system and some of the other issues and so forth. So I think there's some good things in this measure that are trying to be attempted, which we're, encouraged by, and we just got to keep working at it. And somewhere in here, there's got to be a solution to this, because it's a problem that's, has to get solved. But it also has to be solved in a way that is, consistent with the realities of these times, in which there's just a lot of apprehension on the part of the public and the business community that we largely represent about, paying more and more and more for stuff. It's just the public has kind of had it with paying more. And we see it in ways we've never seen it before. And again, hopefully that'll change, because the public investment is what we need in a whole lot of areas, and maybe especially and including transit, but it also goes to other areas of public infrastructure and housing and services that people are rightfully demanding. So I'll leave it at that. So I will abstain on it, but Rebecca, I urge you to keep pushing hard and let's see if we can get there.
Thank you, Chair Wonderman. Director Duke?
Yeah, I definitely agree with a lot of the comments that have been made about, the need for consolidation and the more seamless experience of the transportation. And, I think we find, as Chair Wonderman was saying, many people want to see these things happen, but then how you fund it is always the challenge. And so I'm supportive of this. But I do think that there needs to be more education, in general, like in every level, whether it's transportation, housing, all of these things, infrastructure, like, trying to get people to understand, like how infrastructure is important and critical and necessary. And also we have to pay to have it, right? So it's important that we are always working to educate the end users on how that all happens.
Thank you. For myself, I'm also in favor. I resonate with all of the comments that have been made, pro and con, quite frankly. But the one that stands out the most for me is really the experience that you described, Director Delbono, which is from the end user perspective. They're really indifferent as to who's providing the transportation they need to get from here to there to be productive, and whether to be productive citizens or to be productive economically, to get to school, whatever the case may be. And so I'm very much in favor of that. There's a lot of questions in my mind about how it will be an equitable process, how it will be governed, how individual cities and locales can participate, be treated fairly, as I've said, but also maintain their unique characteristics. And I'm sure that will work out. If it doesn't go forward, it can't be worked out. So I
Mhm.
very much want to see it go forward.
Yeah.
What I particularly like about what the staff has proposed is their commitment to withdrawing our support, should the bill itself, take a turn that isn't favorable to our fiduciary responsibility. And so I too support the item. With that said, is there any public comment?
There, no one has any.
Thought I saw a hand come up, but maybe.
Yeah.
Done taking it down. Okay. Okay. So is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
All right, second. All right. Connie?
Chair Wonderman.
I'll abstain.
Sorry, Vice Chair Moyer,
Yes.
Director Alba,
Yes.
Director Del Bono,
Yes.
Director Hughes.
Yes.
Got it.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item number 9, which is the approved amendment number 1 to the memorandum of understanding for the Berkeley Marina Ferry Facility Project.
Thank you. That is the action before you. Just a little background on this. The original MOU laid out the terms for undertaking phase 1 of the project, which was a feasibility study. So this in a way was somewhat of the model that we use for the service vision, which is going to come before you in a subsequent item, where you know the initial phase of in the WETA project development cycle is feasibility study, and this assesses you know the basic defines the parameters and assesses the basic feasibility of the project, and the results of that are presented to not only the WETA board but the local jurisdictions we're partnering with. That occurred. That study was completed, determined the project was feasible, and the results were presented to not only the city of Berkeley Council in December 2021, but also the WETA board in March 2020. So that represented the conclusion of that first phase of the project. The second phase of the project, which is the subject of this MOU amendment, would include environmental review, concept design to support the environmental review, and project permitting. So with that, the funding for that project had not been secured at the conclusion of phase 1. The city, and in particular as a staff, like to really give my appreciation to Liza, Roger, Scott, Ellie, and Christina, have been very dedicated and very dogged in their pursuit of moving this project forward. So they actually managed to get funding from not only the County of Alameda in the amount of $5.8 million, but also a grant from the California State Coastal Conservancy in the amount of $2.2 million. So that money, in combination with the $3 million in RM3 that WETA is committed to supporting this phase of the project, is enough to fully fund the environmental review, concept design, and permitting of the project. So we're able to move forward with the next 3 to 4 years of the project, which will include that work. It's a very strong partnership that's continued from the phase 1 work with WETA and Berkeley City, or City of Berkeley staff. The city will be the lead in design, environmental review, and permitting. So they'll be doing the contracting. They'll be doing all the technical notices of preparation for the CEQA work, as well as the NEPA work. We'll be working very closely with them. We'll be a responsible agency for CEQA, and hopefully continue what's been a great partnership thus far in the project. Pending the outcome of the conclusion of the phase 2 work, we would potentially come back to the board as well as the city council with a proposal to move forward with phase 3 of the project, which would include construction. So this MOU amendment only sets forth the roles and responsibilities and funding obligations for phase 2. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have about it.
Quick question. Did you say a concept design or is it full design, 100%?
Sorry, my mistake. It is full design.
Okay, fantastic. Great.
I think my question our concern that I've asked over and over again and looking for an answer on is when we start to move forward is I just, you know, with Berkeley envisioning how we're getting people down University to the ferry, to the pier, to the ferry terminal, that the proposed ferry terminal, how people would be moved to that point, because obviously, I mean, very familiar with Berkeley and very familiar with the pier. And where are people going to park? But more importantly, the aspect of getting people down University. I just had this conversation with somebody who's a small business owner and architect that lives in Berkeley, who was on me about the fact that he loves taking the ferry, but he ends up in Richmond and then has to get from Richmond back home to Berkeley and deep in Berkeley. And I brought that up to him too. I'm like, hey, how does this work when, you know, the majority of people are living at the, you know, deep into Berkeley and getting people down University Avenue to where the ferry terminal is? And I just, you know, I still haven't heard much information about that yet. So I'm hoping that in this next phase, at some point, we can start hearing more about Berkeley's plan on how we're moving or how they're going to move their citizens and their residents down to the ferry terminal, because I think it definitely needs a ferry terminal. I think it has to be there. I think it would be a great addition to the water transportation on the bay. But that one key part that I've been asking probably for, I don't know, a long time now has not been addressed or answered yet. So I'm just, okay.
So perhaps what I could offer, and
yeah,
we totally get the concerns in general and, you know, the desire to see some specifics. What I could maybe propose is that moving forward with this work, you know, the city will be awarding a contract. They're very close to doing that for the design firm. They'll be awarding a contract with the environmental firm in anticipation of this issue. And specifically, we've relayed the comments you've made over the years to the staff on behalf of the project. They actually went ahead and hired a TDM firm early on before hiring the environmental review and concept firm or concept design firm to specifically address this issue. So they're going to be looking at parking demand. They're going to be looking at alternate ways to get people to the terminal, whether that's connecting transit, which is challenging, or perhaps shuttles. You know, one thing of note on, you know, on some of our routes, we see as many as 25% of people arrive by bike. For instance, Seaplane Lagoon, especially warmer months, 25–30% of people are arriving by bike. That doesn't work for everybody. So we're going to have to look at, you know, a comprehensive access program. And so, you know, maybe what I would propose is, as that work moves forward and it's already underway, we could invite the project team to come give an update presentation to the WETA board and speak and begin to speak to some specifics about the general.
Great. Thanks.
Anybody else?
Yeah, no, I'm just excited about this project. It's exciting to see it come forward and to see the model that we are going to be using going forward for other similar pilot projects. And I do think that City of Berkeley has a new member on their team that is familiar with San Francisco Bay Ferry. Their new public works director just came from Vallejo. So Terrence Davis is going to be there, so, or is already there. So yes, I'm excited to see this move forward.
Great. Chair Wonderman, did you have any comments on this item?
You know, my only comment is similar to Director Delbano's on this, is that, you know, we really need to get some clarity around what the actions will be to ensure that there's passengers who can easily access the ferry, and that the city's doing its part, because there's some changes in the city government, and you know, Mayor Aragon is leaving, and he was such a big supporter of this, and Rigel Robinson left the city council, and he was a really big supporter of this. So want to make sure that you know, we end up with a terminal that's really part of a partnership that you know, I think it has been up to this point. I have no reason to believe that it won't be, and I think it's still a very important project that should be there. It's a missing tooth in the system, in my view, and we should fill it.
Thank you, Chair Wonderman. And I do see Liza McNulty from the city, or if you want to comment.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. My name is Liza McNulty. I am the Capital Improvement Program Manager for the City of Berkeley Parks, Recreation and Waterfront Department, and I am the Project Manager for the Berkeley Pier Ferry Project. As Mike mentioned, the original MOU between the city and WETA resulted in a study that confirmed the feasibility of a dual-purpose pier providing both recreation and ferry access at the Berkeley waterfront. The $3 million of RM3 funds identified by WETA for this project, together with just over $8 million in grant funding that the city has secured from the State Coastal Conservancy and Alameda County Transportation Commission, allows us to complete the environmental and engineering analyses, documents, design, and permitting for this project. I just wanted to quickly make sure you knew that we fully support amending the current MOU between the City of Berkeley and WETA to continue our successful partnership on this important project. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Robert Rogers, I see you have your hand up. Did you want to give public comment?
I did, yes. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Chair Wonderman and members of the board. I'm speaking again on behalf of the Bay Planning Coalition. And this time I am here to voice our support for the Berkeley Marina Ferry Facility project and to advocate for its progression to the next phase of development. For over 40 years, the Bay Planning Coalition has championed policies and practices that promote the success of our region's economy and environment. We believe this project aligns perfectly with our organization's values while supporting the much-needed expansion of the region's ferry service. The proposed Berkeley ferry service will offer residents, especially those in low-income and disadvantaged communities, an affordable and environmentally friendly transportation option connecting them with the wider Bay Area. This initiative will have a significant positive impact on the region by expanding mobility choices for residents and businesses in West Berkeley, alleviating traffic congestion, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We are enthusiastic about the potential of a new ferry service in Berkeley and eagerly anticipate the completion of this development phase. Thank you again for your time and for allowing me to speak today.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Anyone else wanting to speak on this item?
No one has signed up to speak.
All right. For myself, Mike, I also have had the same question. I think we've talked about this before on the corridor there, particularly for motorized vehicles. And so I don't see anything in the resolution that sometimes says that, you know, we'll have periodic updates, and I don't think we need that per se. But I would just ask that I think all of us do get public outreach, and so we really prefer to hear from staff, but if we could just hold you to that commitment to come back with the team, with the professional team, that would be fantastic. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
No?
Chair Wonderman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moyer,
Yes.
Director Alba,
Yes.
Director Del
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Item 10. I'm just gonna let you say what that is. Whoever's doing that.
Good afternoon, board members. Jennifer Raupach, Grants Manager. I'm here to present a follow-up to the previous item, which is to seek authorization to submit the RM3 allocation request to MTC for the Berkeley Marina Ferry Facility Project in the amount of $3 million. As Mike mentioned, the project will be, funds will be used for preliminary engineering and environmental review to construct the pier and terminal at the Berkeley Marina. The city of Berkeley, who is the project lead, they have successfully secured $5.8 million from Alameda County Transportation Commission and $2.2 million from the California State Coastal Conservancy. With the RM3 funds, that would bring the total for this phase to $11 million. The project is in the adopted fiscal year 24 budget, and the item will be presented to the MTC Commission. Happy to answer questions about the funding.
All right, thank you. Directors?
I'm ready to make a motion to authorize the filing of this request to MTC for $3 million.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any public comment? Okay.
Chair Wonderman,
Well, I'd rather we get 3 million from them than them from us, so yes.
Vice Chair Moyer,
Yes.
Director Alba,
Yes.
Director Del
Yes.
Yes.
Mike, your respite was short-lived. All right, item 11, adopt the 2050 service vision and expansion plan.
Thank you. Thank you specifically to the subcommittee on this, and the business plan project, Directors Moyer and Alba. It's been a long haul getting here, but this is an exciting action to adopt the 2050 service vision and expansion plan. And thank you to the full board for the discussion last month. We got some really good feedback, and we did make a couple changes in response to that feedback, specifically on emergency response, strengthening some language on first last mile connections as well. And there's a summary of those changes, and then a presentation of the final policy, which includes the service vision map in the staff report. Pending approval of this item, this really locks in, kind of serves as the pivot point for preparing the rest of the business plan. So that work would unfold over the next year and really support a lot of the ongoing efforts that we have to lay out an implementation plan and financial plan for our capital program. Which it's very dynamic right now with all the different grant opportunities that we've been successful with, the grant opportunities that we're currently engaged with, and future grant opportunities. But the chance to really take a comprehensive look at our capital plan, look at the prioritization of which projects we're going to do in the near medium term, identify the funding we have, and then identify the gaps in funding that part of those to complete the capital program. Beyond that, we have a collection of other focus areas that haven't necessarily gotten all the attention that they're going to get with the focus on the service vision, but we have other focus areas relating to WETA's role as the network manager of areas is the way we present it. More specifics about our access policy, first last mile connections, emergency response, organizational development, and environmental stewardship. So a couple specific things that be coming forth in the next few months. We have a sustainability policy that'll further flesh out, what environmental stewardship means for us. One of the kind of foundational things in the service vision is electrification of the system. There are also other areas that we want to kind of express our policy, our agency priorities in terms of our environmental stewardship, and the sustainability policy will be speaking to those. We'll have an access policy following that, which again gives a lot more detail and information about our strategy the first last month. So that will be coming forward over the course of the next year. The next step we'll be engaging with the board will likely be the draft business plan, in addition to those other support policies that come forward. And again, thank you for all the feedback, and happy to answer any questions you have prior to considering it.
All right. Director? More on this? Chair Wonderman?
No, look, I think we've come a long way, baby. That's what I think. I appreciate the work of the team, on our board, Jessica and Monique for, working with the staff to advance this. I know you put a lot of hours and thought into it, and I think Mike and your team have put made it's a lot of work, really think about what the future is going to be 25 years out when you don't know everything. And I think you've done a really good job putting it together, and it's exciting, and it gives us a North Star. I'm excited to get behind it. So thank you.
Yeah. Is there any public comment?
Nobody gets signed up.
I'll make a motion.
Awesome.
And second,
Chair Wonderman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Boyer,
Yeah.
Director Alba.
yes.
Director Del Bono.
Yes.
Director Duke.
Yes.
Yay.
Fantastic.
I feel so much better.
All right, item 12, just fiscal year 2023, 24 capital budget for vessel and truck.
Vice Chair Ware, members of the board. This is a little bit of a cleanup item for the fiscal year that's wrapping up right now. In working through the budget for next year and reviewing each and every capital project, but we were pleased to discover that several of our vessel projects moving
faster than we had planned for a year ago. So the item before you today is basically has 4 elements. What the first 2 involve increased cash flow authority for the high-speed vessel project and for the Solano Bay Breeze replacement projects. Both of those projects need a little more funding in the current fiscal year. It's not a budget increase for the project overall. With the exception of the new commuter class vessel, basically the Delphinus, which, as you know, we just launched, needed a little more extra funding, $305,000 out of the $30 million project budget. It's not too bad, mostly due to sales tax changing at the end of the road. Use tax, actually, even though it's a construction project, you still have to pay use tax on it in the location where you birth it. Thank you. And then just to kind of reflect, as long as we were doing a budget amendment, we reflected on all the other projects for the current year. And there are 2 that are moving a little slower than we had anticipated with very good reason. And I have several engineers here who can speak to it more specifically, but the Tintley and the Mare Island, which will be electric vessel replacement, the first 2 big, large investments in electric vessel technology. Those are moving a little more slowly. So those 2 are being decreased by $7 million and $4 million respectively. So the overall net change to the capital budget for the current fiscal year is a decrease of $3,847,000, $47,485. Stop right there.
Directors, any questions or comments? Be straightforward.
I love the fact that things are moving forward faster.
Yeah.
Chair Wonderman, questions from you?
He's feeling so much better than he left the meeting.
Taking a nap.
No, did you ask if I was going to comment? I couldn't tell.
I did ask, sorry. Did you have any questions or comments?
No, I reviewed it. I thought it was a good presentation. I think I understand it. So I'll listen to the questions from others or comments, and maybe I'll come back. But I think a good job. There's been a lot of improvement in the last couple of years in how the budget's expressed, and I understand it better than I used to, which is good.
But what does happen to the surplus? It did, because we're not changing the overall project budget, it just flows to, you'll see it in the fiscal year 25. It just rolls forward, and it's because almost all of our capital projects are reimbursement based. It's really not it's just it's not we pay it later and we right. Yeah. All right. Motion, please.
So move. Second.
Wonderman.
Yes.
Public comment.
Hold on, I don't think I have a public comment.
Gave him $300,000.
I'm sorry. Chair Wonderman.
Still yes.
Yes. Director Alba.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and now the item you've all been waiting for. The proposed fiscal year 2024-25 budget and salary schedule. I finally figured out how to work it. 3 years in. Okay, so just to review, first of all, I'm staying up here by myself, but if you can envision about 15 people behind me, I want to thank everybody. The WETA staff really works together. This is a very complicated budget for, it's 25 pages, so I'm sure it doesn't seem uncomplicated, but we've taken probably 100 different line items and tried to simplify them in a way that makes sense to the public and to the board. And so thanks to everybody for all their hard work on that. So today we're presenting you with the draft budget. You won't be voting on it today. Today's a chance for you to give input and review the 25-page document before you. And then we will come back in June with not only the final budget document, but all of the required resolutions, which includes all the funding agency resolutions that we have to get your authority to request for all of the pieces of the budget. So it's a hefty budget, $157.6 million, and this is just a simple breakdown of what that is composed of. The operating budget is 74.7 million, and capital projects is slightly higher at $82.9 million. And these are the sources. So you can see that bridge tolls weigh heavily in this year's budget, and we do have federal funds, but those are only for capital. State fund is third, and then goes from there. And I'll talk about passenger fares. It says $5 million. We will be receiving more than $5 million, but I'll walk through that with you. The reason that's low is because, as we discussed at the last meeting, we're going to be using fare revenue to build our reserve. So again, bridge toll is very important this year, far more important than prior years. We are not proposing any significant service changes other than the Redwood City Special Event Service that you heard about, and the two demonstration projects that we've been talking about. One of which we've been talking about for a year, the other one a little less, actually both for a year. And then there are multiple initiatives in the budget, including a giant electrification effort, a pretty hefty state of good repair budget that we'll talk about when we get to the capital budget. Obviously the pilot services that we've talked about, there's a ton of work on Thompson for the passenger initiatives and marketing. And as discussed starting in March around our reconfiguration of the staffing and the resources that we need to undertake the electrification, as well as building the financial reserve. Also, I wanted to say at the very beginning, a lot of the budget, balancing the budget starts with the fare revenue, and the fare revenue is driven by the ridership growth. And the planners have worked really hard to figure out what that realistic, high, we've talked a lot about high, low, it could be higher or lower, but about 12% growth from the current year budget is what they're anticipating. And that's about 80% of what we had in 2019, which is up from the 71% that was projected for the current year. And again, this is our first budget without federal operating support. We have basically are running out this month. And so we're on our own now, but fortunately we have RM3 as we've talked about. So our fiscal cliff is not imminent. We have some breathing room as we talked about in the last slide. So going back to the $75 million operating budget, 69 million of that is for our regular ferry service. 5.5 million is for planning and administration. 88% of that is really just to fund the ongoing service routes. And so this just gives you a picture of how that plays out, Vallejo being kind of the largest slice of our operating pie, and then it goes down. All of these charts are in your packet, so I'm going to go kind of fast just to allow time for questions. This is a look at the expense pie, $69 million. If you just exclude planning administration for a minute, you just look at the ferry services themselves. You have $65.7 million for this regular 6 routes that it does include special events, and $3.5 million for the pilot. So that's about a 6% increase over the prior year. The revenues that's the quota, you can see this is a very different picture than last year, where we had pretty hefty operating support from the federal government. Now you have RM2 and RM3 making up a giant slice of our revenue pie. You'll also see the purple slice, which is state transit assistance, and that is also filling a big gap in the budget. Partly because even though we're anticipating fare revenue of $14.1 million associated with that ridership growth for next year, And that's an $11 million revenue increase over the prior year. Because as we talked about at the last meeting, we're going to be transferring some of that money into our reserve. $8 million that's going to move into the reserve, and then we're going to use the state transit assistance money. We're going to use our balance in state transit assistance to fill that gap. So it ends up looking like fare revenue is not that big a contributor, but it's really a big contributor to our financial stability. It's going to go into our bank account, and the last slide I'll remind you of what that looks like. But it's an important revenue source where it is growing pretty proportionally to the ridership growth. You know, it doesn't play out exactly the same because of the different fare levels, and the growth is occurring at different places. But it's a really important part of our financial picture. So in the breakdown of the operating components, we have labor and fuel, which makes up more than 50% of the service budget, right? It's people and fuel. We are budgeting at the same level that we did last year, which is $4.20 a gallon. Right now, it's almost $1 below that for us. So it is an increase over what the amounts we're seeing today, but there's so much volatility, and it's a difficult market to anticipate. It's the other important reason to have reserves is that, you know, if you look at the trend line, in the current year, we think we're going to end up a little bit below budget. So we're in good shape for this year, and we just felt like it was a good level to start with for next year. You know, the other growths are really just about labor agreement increases. There are some health and benefit pickups that happened as part of negotiation. But otherwise, the staffing in the operations area is pretty consistent in the prior year. Vessel maintenance and repair, it's showing a 22% increase over the prior year. $8.8 million is a bit higher, but partly that has to do with boring into some of the costs, and we're shifting some of the costs around because they weren't being properly reflected in the right area. They were showing up in facility expenses. So going through that, it's a big part of that increase is really just that shift. But there are more vessels. We are, you know, Delphinus will be here for a full year, whereas it wasn't there for a full year last year. There's also going to be more investments in gear modifications for the fixes class, more spare parts, and there's emissions improvement work happening at the vehicle level on the entire fleet. Facilities expense is remaining relatively flat because of that shift of cost. It's the cost of our 2 maintenance facilities, also the cost of maintaining terminals. You know, it's again the same increasing rates for labor rates, benefits rates. There's also, you know, in general, property insurance goes up every year. Utilities are going up. Basic inflationary increases. System expenses is that, you know, it's a category that's quite broad because it includes all the things that apply to all the facilities, all of the services. In this budget, overall, in past years, the budget for the system has had we have these 2 distinct pieces, the administration and planning budget and the operating budget. And every year there's been this $1 million transfer of overhead costs to the ferry service budget. And we are eliminating that this year because it doesn't really serve any true accounting or funding purpose. It really was making it hard for us to track the labor costs between the 3 places labor live. And it just was making it hard for us every year to figure out how our spending was going. And a lot of the financial systems were trying to make things simpler and easier to track. And so the budget looks like there's a slight decrease, but it's really just the elimination of that transfer between those 2 areas. Kind of a wonky thing. I just want to bring it to your attention so you're not looking at it and saying, how come things cost less this year? It's basically the same cost. It's just reflecting differently on different pieces of the budget. But this, you know, there are normal inflationary COLAs, all of those kinds of things that normally happen in all of the areas are happening here. And so within this portion of the budget, there are a lot of really good things happening. There's the launch of the new website for the SF Bay Ferry system. Again, as I mentioned with Tom's team, a lot of outreach effort. We're starting the effort that you have approved to begin the process of re-procuring for our contracted operator. There's a lot of work planned in that area. Flipper 2.0 is for real supposed to launch this time. We had originally budgeted for it last year. We've shifted some money to the new year because the latest estimate is the end of this calendar year. But in the meantime, you have to carry Flipper 1 and Flipper 2 at the same time. So lots more cost. And then you approved an emergency response position for us in March. And so we're anticipating some extra work around that, or more exercises. We're gonna likely do an RP for a new contract for some help on that front. So we're anticipating a lot more work on emergency response in the coming year. Just to remind you of the staffing plan and how that works in the budget, and how this transfer that we've eliminated, I think makes things a little more clear. The board approved our reorganization effort in order to fully staff this huge electrification program that we have to undertake, and the 9 new positions that are included in the salary chart in your packet. The cost for WETA labor, SF Bay Ferry WETA labor are in 3 places in the budget. The first is in the planning and administration budget, and this just shows you that's about $3 million worth of bodies. The operations budget is slightly lower at $2.82 million. And then within the capital budget, it is not broken out by each capital project. It's always been there, but it just was never very clear from the public documents where the salary money was going. So here it is, it's $2.17 million. A lot of the new staff that you approved are actually being paid for out of capital projects. So that's just to give you a good sense of where that's happening. Almost there. Planning administration budget is 5.5 million. Again, I'm just going to keep saying this. We eliminated overhead transfers. So basically the effect of that is that it makes it look like the planning budget is actually going way up, but it's not, since you're just not subtracting $1 million from it at the bottom, which is what used to happen. So it just includes the new staff approved by the board. We are right now including a 2.4% COLA, which is tough. We just generally have looked at the February Bay Area CPI and used that as the guide for what we gave staff, and that's what's in the draft budget right now. It was included in those numbers that I just showed you for the staff. Again, increased DBE work. The planning department has some significant work around sustainability, green marine efforts. We have some, with all the new staff, we're going to be working on some IT upgrades, as well as investments in the ridership database. I'm working on some financial system upgrades. For example, we've been doing all of your board reports by hand, the budget and actual, that's all been done by hand. So on July 1, that'll all be in the system. So that's exciting for me personally. And then if you look at the budget document, there are more than 15 different areas that we've highlighted to you of the work plan that staff is excited and working on, including the pilot programs, the emergency response that I already mentioned, there's a bunch of passenger experience initiatives that Tom is working on, business plan that Mike and his team are working on, and the terminal access plan. Lauren is, I know, in DC trying to help us get some money, but I know she's working really hard on the workforce development plan, the Working Waterfront Coalition. So there's several pages in the board packet on those topics. Finally, on capital projects, well, next to final, we have an $83 million request for approval for fiscal year 25. It represents a $275 million capital program. So the numbers are starting to get really big because of the vessel projects, which are very important, and the electrification. So if you see, there's sort of an even-handed division between vessels and electrification and just straight out vessel construction. Let me just go to the next page. That will help you see that, I'm sorry, the funding for the capital program is primarily federal funded, but we have a significant amount of state money, and that's TIRCP program money mostly. And then we also have the bridge toll funds, which is really the RM3 money that we're going to start tapping into again, mostly for these electrification efforts. So there's 18 ongoing projects. There's 10 additional projects. $36.7 million are related to vessels. 19.6 are related to electrification. And then really too much. 25.5 million is really just state of good repair, replacement, quarter, half, 3/4 life engine projects, refurbishment, replacement of terminals, dredging, all of the things that keep the system reliable, safe, and shiny and clean for our customers, which is what we were talking about earlier, that if you get on transit, they want to know it's going to be there for them. And that's just a really important part of our program. One of the reasons why we needed additional resources to make sure we kept up with all of those projects. Finally, just a reminder of the policy that you approved. I just wanted to reaffirm for you that this budget preserves the goal of what we asked you to approve at the last meeting. So this budget takes some of that fair revenue, that $14 million of fair revenue, puts it into an internal reserve account for us, uses STA balances to backfill for the operating costs, so that at the end of the day, we have an internal $17.9 million fund balance reserve account that will help us be resilient in the face of uncertainty, help us with unanticipated costs, while at the same time preserving some of these other reserves that we have that are held externally, such as our RM3 balance, and our RM1 balances, which are used for the state of good repair project. This is not even the $300 in capital money that we have. These are really operating reserves for the most part. And that's really it. Sorry, I went really fast. I wanted to kind of get through it to give you a chance to ask questions and see if you have comments. Directors, questions, comments?
No. Good job.
Nope. Yeah, straightforward. Yeah.
Easy to understand.
Yeah. Thank you for making it easy for us.
Yeah.
To process. Jim has made some steps.
See. Chair Wonderman?
Yeah, I guess we haven't seen the governor's May revise, but we will pretty soon, as our representatives in Sacramento pointed out. But how concerned? What's the impact of potentially state TIRCP cuts to the capital program? Like, how extensive could that be in terms of its effect on our program?
At the moment, the freeze that they've proposed does not affect us at all. We are not anticipating that. Now, could they go in and try to recapture funds that have already been programmed? I guess they could. I don't know if you have an opinion on that, Shane.
I'd be really surprised. So far, the budget cuts have focused on the extra TIRCP funding that the governor provided to advance capital projects and to use flexibly to support operations and prevent service cuts. And that is not funding that we benefited from. We didn't need to benefit from those because our capital projects are funded by discretionary sources unrelated to those surplus TIRCP funds, and operations are funded by fares and bridge tolls. So I think it would be a really big deal if the governor decided to cut discretionary TIRCP grant funds that we've received, because so many other agencies around the state have received those too and are moving forward with those projects as we speak.
Thank you.
Anything else, Chair Wonderman?
No.
Dr. Du, did you have anything?
No, good job.
Um, first and foremost, thank you for a really comprehensive report now and then the written report as well. And I just, it's always, even though we, we're here every month and we go through it, seeing the work plan and the capital plan laid out the way it is, it's pretty amazing and stunning. So kudos to all of the staff and all of you for the immense amount of work that's undergoing. Super exciting to see it laid out that way. The other thing that struck me, and I really feel the need to call it out, is just thank you to the generosity of the 9 Bay Area County voters for RM2 and RM3. Wow. 50 million going to operating, 55 total for the budget. Where would we be without that money? So that is just so gracious of the voters. And I hope in 2025, when the next increase goes in, they feel that same sense of getting the value for the money, but thank God for that. So thank you to all of you who had the vision to work on RM3 at the time and worked hard for that. It really is showing how important that really is. I did have a quick question. I know we started with this a little bit this morning, but so contrast measure day, is this the last year of that? Is that
No, no, it is not.
Oh, okay.
We're good through 2032.
It is 30. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm confused on that earlier.
Yeah.
I had the
2032.
same comment though, looking at that paragraph that you
Maybe
had,
there's
but it says 2025 is the last year.
It said 2015 for 10 years, so that's
Yeah.
how we got to 2025.
Yeah.
Oh,
it Oh, didn't I see.
start right in 2015. That's what happened. Yes.
Yeah.
Uh,
We
4 years.
Yeah, we have a 10-year operating plan. Mike might be able to speak to this more accurately. We have a 10-year operating plan. The measure extends until 2034, and at the rate that we've been spending the funding, there's enough Measure J funding to support the operations through 2032.
I see.
But every year, the CCTA needs to make a budget decision to allocate Measure J funds to support the operation of the Richmond service. And the reference to 2015 and 2025 is that we had a 10-year operating plan with them that was approved when the service was launched. Is that more or less right?
Right. All right, well, that was really my only question. You answered my other one earlier, so thank you on the field. But again, it was very gratifying to see the sources of funds that we have enabled on an amazing work plan, the demonstration projects, and then also the ability to be a more fiscal structure that you're working through, Aaron. So thank you all for that phenomenal legacy you're building.
Yeah, Aaron always talks about the group of staff that are behind her working on this, and it's true, but we keep trying to make this thing more complex with more grant sources and more pilot programs, and she keeps figuring out ways to simplify the budget and make it understandable and make it more transparent, I think, most importantly. So I know she has ideas for doing even more of that next year that we just haven't been able to get to yet, that she hasn't been able to get to yet, but we're really lucky to have her working on this stuff, so thank you.
All right, so we'll look forward to a little bit more on it next. Okay, so that brings us to item 14, and public comments on non-agenda items. On the call, gonna do public comment? Nobody's not gonna. Then with that, we will adjourn in memory of Will Travis and in best celebration birthday wishes for Nova. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.